We'll intervene whenever we decide it's in our national security interest to intervene. And if you don't like it, lump it.
The problem with America is not that we go around marauding around the world imposing ourselves. The problem with America in the last 10, 15 years since the end of the Cold War, really in the last 60 years, is that we've been too slow to get involved.
I don't know how many Iraqi civilians were killed, but I can assure you that the number is the absolute minimal that it's possible in modern warfare.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
You know, that land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
Welcome to the darkened hour. Hello guys, and welcome to another Matt Chat interview. And this week we've got Conspiracy Lee, as usual. Right, Lee?
Hi guys.
And we have Adam Fitzgerald. Adam is the co-host of a podcast called The Darkened Hour, and he commented on our 9/11 show with lots of counterpoints to stuff that we were saying, and me and Lee found it really interesting because generally there's just arguments and rudeness that goes on underneath this kind of thing, and he was very polite and well-mannered and made a lot of sense in what he was saying. So we thought we've got to get him on. So we got him on, and he's here. Hiya, Adam.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for having me, really.
No problem. Right, so some of the stuff, I don't know if anybody's read what Adam wrote that's listening, but basically he went through a point to point of things that we'd discussed, which me and Lee are absolutely no experts at any of this. No. We just can't.
Not at all.
We just like parrot off stuff that you hear over the last 20 years that people no one ever seems to debate this in any kind of a friendly way. So it's always like, you're a fucking idiot if you don't believe this, or you're an idiot if you do believe this, and all this kind of stuff. So we don't want to do any of that. We just want to kind of like drill down a little bit and see kind of like, are these silly theories? Is there any kind of merit to anything anybody says, or what? So the first thing that you was talking about was the insurance policy taken out on the towers. So what did you say about that, Lee?
About Silverstein, he basically took insurance out on the Twin Towers before 9/11 happened of a terrorist attack, and he got like 4.5 billion. Adam, was it?
That's right, 4.55 billion. Yes.
Yeah, and like until Adam's points, I didn't actually know that he actually like relinquished a lot of that money to build like the new tower. So that basically smashed my theory out the window of like, he's earning out of this, blah blah blah, and all this until Adam the expert comes on and blows me out the water.
So Adam, yes. Where do you believe all of this? Because what you said, if that's true, what you said, which I've no reason to doubt that that's true. I don't know anything. I didn't even know about the insurance policy until Lee mentioned it the other day. But what do you think when you see the kind of stuff that people say about that looks suspicious or anything like that?
Well, it does actually, but the suspicion is actually warranted to a point. When somebody says that Larry Silverstein, along with other insurers, took out an insurance policy of terrorism, they don't realize that there was a terrorist plot that happened 8 years prior, which was the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Now, if you're insuring a building and you're purchasing a building from the Port Authority, which was a 99-year lease, I'm pretty sure that Larry Silverstein's lawyers probably told him that, we're also going to have terrorism in policy, what insurance for the building. For those who don't know anything about the 93 bombing, this may seem suspicious. But the people who purport this conspiracy, saying that, Silverstein was just alone and he's the one who rented the building. Well, Larry Silverstein actually gave a portion of money. The majority of the insurance came from another insurer called Westfield America Incorporated. And they're the ones who had won the building for the leasing of building 1, 2, 4, and 5 World Trade Center. And that's approximately about 425,000 square feet. And they barely won the contract. In fact, the competing contract was won by Swiss Rent Assurance. They're the ones who actually won, but they pulled out, and the competing insurers, which was Silverstein and Westfield, won the contract. And the contract was for 99 years. And they won the contract on July 24, 2001. And so in the contract, the agreement was that Silverstein and Westfield America Incorporated had the right and the obligation to rebuild the structures if they were ever destroyed by an act of terrorism.
Sorry, just to interrupt. So how long was that ongoing for then? You said they won the contract in, did you just say July 2001?
Yeah, the lease was finalized on July 24th, 2001, but the bidding began in the beginning of the year.
Right, okay.
And it happened throughout the next 6-7 months.
Yeah.
Because there was competing agencies for the renting of the World Trade Center. And the problem was that the Port Authority wanted a 99-year lease. And some of these insurers wanted a less, 50 years, 45 years, but they didn't want to go 99. But there were 2 leasers competing for that. And that was Swiss Rent Assurance and Larry Silverstein and Westfield America.
So does he still own the lease now? Has he pulled out?
Yes, but he had to relinquish some of the property rights because after the attacks, Silverstein went to the New York appellate courts and asked for double the insurance, claiming that the 2 towers were 2 separate terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
And what he wanted was $7.1 billion.
Yeah.
And then on May 3rd, 2004, the appellate court said that it happened as one occurrence, one interpretation, meaning one act of terrorism. And he actually appealed that decision, but he lost the appeal, but he was awarded $4.5 billion, which was $4 billion more than what they put in. He didn't put in that much. What happened was, this is where the misconception begins, is that people think, well, he only put in a couple of million and he got $4.5 billion. Well, this is where I wrote an article on Medium about Silverstein actually losing money, because when he got that $4.5 billion, he actually took every single penny of that into the restructure of the World Trade Center. And because he had to pay for the lease as well, he had to remember, he has to continue to pay for the $102 million annual lease, the base rent, as well as the rebuilding of the towers. So what happened was that in the end, the reconstruction cost of the World Trade Center cost $7 billion. So he lost property rights for one World Trade Center. One World Trade Center, the big tower, is not under Silverstein's name.
Okay.
So that's where he lost money.
Yeah.
Now,
Lee,
if I may interrupt just for a second, this is also, I'm not in defense of Silverstein here. I want to make sure that this is not to say that he may have gotten a call a week or months prior and said, don't be at the World Trade Center because we think a terrorist attack is going to happen. Because he's actually good friends with Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah. And I could get into that later, but
that could be another show. I was looking at some of your stuff, Adam, and some of the goings on around the whole event and stuff, and I thought there's about 25 shows here, but we just got to deal with this one today, because this is what me and Lee come across a lot, and this is why I wanted to do this. Was we thought doing a 9/11 show would, because all you hear on social media and stuff is all these theories and all this other stuff. So it's like, in a way, you kind of want to either squash it, or is there any validity to anything people are saying? And if we kind of drill down into it a little bit, people listening will kind of potentially understand things a little bit more, or be satisfied with, because there's never really been anybody come out and say, people seem to think they're more clever by agreeing with anything they read online. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I've watched a YouTube video, so therefore I'm now an authority on this, and that's kind of like what that people's attitude. So I wanted to kind of like just do away with that if I can, at the best. But the second point, so with the insurance thing, you're happy with that, Lee?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you're not suspicious of that?
Not in a way, but like as Adam said, it's like not to say that Silverstein got a call to say don't be at the World Trade Centers at this time, but what gets me is like for me, I just think the whole event is very suspicious in regards to an ulterior motive. But we'll get to that.
We'll probably get to that. So the second point what you took against was the planes. Crashed. All of the 4 planes crashed into the supposed targets, and they found the black boxes for flight 93 and the data recorder for 77 and passenger remains. Now, this one is probably going to be quite a big one, because I've never really seen, like, when you look at other crashes through the years, when you look at similar crashes when it crashed into the ground or whatever, there's huge remains everywhere. And with the Shanksville crash, there was really nothing to be seen. Fragments, right? Am I right, or have I completely missed something?
No, I think your suspicions are warranted again, but then you have to also take into an effect that every single crash is not similar in its properties. You have to take in effect the speeds of the crash in which each plane is made. What kind of object did the plane crash into? What was the size of the plane of each plane? Everybody looks at their general plane crash and think, oh, this is how plane crashes should be looking like. Well, I'll give you an example. There was a couple of years ago, there was a plane called German Wings 8989, which was a plane that crashed into the Andes Mountains. Now, this plane actually crashed into a mountainside, and it left very little visible plane debris. The biggest part of the plane actually that was found was the fuselage and one tire. They didn't find any of the black boxes. They didn't find any of the engines that were in the plane. Now, with the World Trade Center and with the Pentagon and with Shanksville, each of these planes were going well over the speed limit. The speed limit is 563 miles an hour for an Airbus 367-200, and the Flight 93 went it was like 613 miles an hour. And with Flight 93, incidentally, they found more of that plane than the plane at the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, because with the World Trade Center, the plane crashed into a solid structure. With the Flight 77 that crashed into the Pentagon, it crashed into a solid structure. Flight 93 crashed right into the ground, dirt ground. So it nosedived into the ground at a 180-degree angle. So that means it crashed nose first. So all the plane, actually, it's like a can. You take a soda can, you crash it from top to bottom, and what you'll see is a flat can. At the bottom looks like the top. So all the plane of Flight 93 just went right into the ground. They found the fuselage of the plane in the woods nearby. The ground was actually an old reclaimed strip mine that used to exist there. So the ground, I think, was like 30 to 40, it was 15 feet deep. And they found one of the engines there. They found another engine, I think it was half a mile away. They found the flight data recorder. They found the cockpit voice recorder. Now, that was important because that's the only cockpit voice recorder that actually survived all the crashes. So even though that the plane actually blew up into millions of pieces, because it actually was like a bomb, because the plane is fully loaded with kerosene, because it was supposed to be a cross-country flight. Yes, they did find plane debris, but the plane debris was very small. So that's why there's a lot of conspiracy regarding it. Goes, look, they didn't find human bodies, they didn't find luggage, they didn't find parts of the plane. All that is untrue. They actually found DNA and human remains for all the passengers, all 45 of the passengers and crew. And that was collected by the Somerset County Coroner, Wallace Miller, who's often misquoted at times, saying, oh, we didn't find, we didn't see a drop of blood. Well, yeah, that would be right. You're not going to find blood at a site where the plane exploded and fully loaded into the ground at 600 and 13 miles an hour. But
Was it true, Adam, that they found a black box like 25 feet in the ground?
The cockpit and the flight data recorder were found within that vicinity of the crash.
Yeah.
The hole is made by the nose of the plane, and of course you see the dents of the wings. But all the field, the debris field, was very long. It was like 2.5 miles, even though that itself is exaggerated. The conspiracy theorists like to say it was 8 miles long, but that's only if you're going by the road. But according to the debris field, it's 2.5 miles.
Yeah. See, because the thing with Shanksville is, like, I've been researching other plane crashes. Like you've explained a couple, like the Lockerbie plane crash in Scotland. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yes, I do.
That was actually exploded by a bomb that was on board the plane. But when you see that crash, you see the cockpit and everything. You see massive parts, and like taking what you've said, there's different types of plane crashes. But also, do you remember the Colt American crash in Poland?
Yes, I do. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not familiar with me.
Yeah, basically, like that plane went nose first as well. It went into stall and went nose diving into a creek in Poland. And with that one as well, I found didn't find that one strange, but as an example towards plane crashes, there was a lot of massive parts of debris in the ground and other things. So it's strange that with these crashes that there's a lot of like people saying, oh yeah, much of the plane like disintegrated and things like that. So it just puzzles me a little bit when you see examples of other plane crashes.
Right. Now, if I could just add to that, Lee, for you, is that those planes weren't piloted by people who were actually wanting to crash the plane.
Yeah.
So with Lockerbie, actually, the bomb exploded in midair, and the plane went into a large millions of pieces, and it didn't nosedive into the ground at 600 miles an hour. So you have to take that into effect as well. These planes actually were piloted by people who actually wanted to crash the plane.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. So, are you happy with that, Lee?
Yeah, definitely.
The Shanksville one. So, I mean, it is to me, it's very, very strange. But then again, I don't look into it. You see this stuff, you think that is a bit weird. But I'm no plane crash expert, and you know, when people were saying there's no bodies and there's no this, I'm thinking, shit, what's going on here? Did that even happen?
Surely there is.
Yeah.
If I may add, gentlemen, is that I'm not agreeing with the official narrative here.
No.
There is a conspiracy, and it's the biggest conspiracy of 9/11 may have just been with Flight 93.
Yeah.
And I could get into that in a later podcast or.
I would disagree, because I think the Pentagon is the weirdest thing. Out of this whole story.
Sure.
Like, have you got an explanation? Because I've never heard one that's satisfied me as to why there is no footage of any plane at the Pentagon.
Sure. There's no footage of the Titanic sinking. But why do we believe the Titanic sunk? It's because you have eyewitness accounts of people who were actually there. Well, there was 145 people that actually testified that there was a plane crashing into the building.
But there's probably 2 million people that have seen the Loch Ness Monster.
Sure. Right. But there again, with Flight 93, plane debris that was found inside the building as well. They found the flight data recorder. They found actually the fuselage that was landing in between A and C drive of the Pentagon. They found wheels of the Pentagon. They found the human remains of the passengers of Flight 77. So they found all, and that's the biggest. In fact, that's the biggest investigation in Washington D.C. history, is when Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. Now, your suspicions are warranted, because why isn't the Pentagon outfitted with 1 million cameras?
Yeah.
And why couldn't we see?
Yeah, this is the point I was saying to you earlier.
Pentagon? Now, that may reasonably be true. This is the thing now. there were 2 cameras located on the security console, which is east of the building. Now, it's not going to catch a plane going 565 miles an hour in one fell swoop. So there's no clear picture of a plane crashing into the building. All we see is a blur, and it crashes into you see the explosion that, encapsulates the whole building. But, yeah, there is no clear-cut camera. Or maybe there is, and that the government doesn't want to release it, so that the conspiracy is that no plane crashed into the Pentagon, which is still believed to the very day.
Yeah. See, because I watched a video earlier on today, and I've watched it yesterday. I've watched it many times over the years, and I've tried to slow it down. I even got my wife to watch it. I said, "Please tell me you see a plane. Like, is there a plane going into that building?" She said, "You see like a white thing at the start of the frame, and then just the explosion." And I just think to myself, it's like the Pentagon is one of the most protected buildings in the USA, like second probably from the White House, and the amount of cameras that they've got on that building, and obviously declassifying 9/11 a few years ago with the audio stuff of the passengers and stuff like that. Surely they've got to declassify that as well. And if they have got other footage, they've got to show it just to shut people up who think it's a missile. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like because a lot of people do think it's a missile.
Oh,
or
sure.
Some sort of rocket or something. Yeah.
If I may add to that, Lee, for you, is that the conspiracy is that the conspiracy surrounding the Pentagon happened very early. In fact, the very first conspiracy that ever exists in 9/11 for trutherdom is in 2002. Yeah. A French author by the name of Thierry Masson wrote a book called Le Pentgate, and he actually asserts that a missile impacted the Pentagon. As for the amount of cameras at the Pentagon, that's classified. Nobody actually knows about that. But where the plane crashed, there wouldn't be cameras facing down on just the west wall. In fact, there's a parking lot, and then there's that grass field. And people say, well, there's no markings on the grass field. That's not true either. In fact, there's photographs that are close by of the damage itself, and you can see cars burnt out, and the hole itself is not 16 feet. That's what Thierry Masson asserts. So the hole is really small. That's the hole. That's the hole that you see between A and C Drive. That's where the nose cone actually, the explosion happened through there, and that's where all the fuselage is laying. You have the wheel is laying there as well. They found parts of the nose cone. Actually, investigators actually found part of the nose cone right by there. But the entry hole before the facade collapses is 144 feet wide, and that's not indication of a missile or any type of like torpedo attack of some sort or bomb attack. The hole is 141 feet wide, and also too, how would a missile knock down 5 light poles? And there's also a generator nearby on the west of the building, and it has like a clipping damage made from the wing itself before it impacted the building. And also too, there's no eyewitness account of a missile impacting the building. Everybody that was in the vicinity of the Pentagon said that it was a large plane that crashed into the building.
Sorry, Lee. On that, Adam.
Sure.
So that was a hell of a pilot then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
For a bloke that's just done like a 2-week crash course on a simulator that we're supposed to believe. Would that not be a bit suspicious to you that this guy can get a direct hit like that on the Pentagon that low at that speed?
Right, and there you have it. There's the conspiracy, right? Was Hani Hanjour really the pilot? And if like the big conspiracy is that it wasn't a plane, and if you don't have a hijacked plane, you don't have hijackers. If you don't have hijackers, you don't have the intelligence apparatuses monitoring them for the last 3 years. If you don't have the intelligence apparatuses following the hijackers, who do you blame, right? So if there's no hijackers, there's no plane, there's no calls, there's no intelligence apparatuses, you're left with nothing. And this is the message I try to bring to people who don't believe in any planes or don't believe in hijackers, is that it's in. You may. I don't believe, from my perspective, I don't believe Alejandro flew that plane. Now, I don't discount the planes could have been remotely controlled. That's something I don't know. I believe that's the difference, right?
By who? By who, Adam?
Yeah, but that's the thing. By who? In fact, the conspiracy surrounding that is that it was from Dov Zakheim, and he's in control of. I forgot the name of the company that's that he's part owner, and that they deal with remote control or remote piloting mechanism that could have been for all the flights itself, not just Flight 77. But if that was the case, what was the story behind Flight 93? Because Flight 93 crashed into the ground. Why didn't it crash into the U.S. Capitol or the White House, for that example? But I don't discount remote control hijacking of the planes. I don't.
See, I was watching a video. It was quite a while ago now. A little documentary about these. It was a couple of experienced airline pilots, and I was talking about the Pentagon, the plane going into the Pentagon. They were saying that for someone to fly that low at that speed would take like a lot of experience and a lot of skill, because like you said, Adam, it's like the lamppost knocked over, like you get lamppost knocked over and things like that. See, no one ever tells you that. So when you don't know that, you just think, yeah, it's a missile. But when you hear of lampposts getting knocked over and that, you start to think, yeah, well, it could be a plane. But I just wish that there was like a clearer like picture. Not that I want to see a plane crashing. Do you know what I mean? No. It's like I want to see for myself that it was definitely 100% a plane. Like, I'm not discrediting what you're saying. But,
right. Wouldn't that also be a problem for any event that didn't have video evidence?
Yeah.
Right.
Course, yeah.
We can only go by what the people who were there and what they actually experienced.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like you could say that when you mentioned the Titanic and that earlier on. I would be suspicious if the Titanic was going to be followed by a series of other ships filming it, and then they said, sorry, there's no footage of it going down, then that would arise some kind of suspicion, wouldn't it? Hang on, what's going on here? Why has nobody seen it going down? Whereas you'd expect, it's the expectation. Everybody's already seen these planes going into the towers, and then you're told that there is absolutely no footage from anywhere of a plane going into the Pentagon, like not from any bystanders, not from any CCTV on any local businesses, nothing other than anecdotal evidence.
See, if it was today, everyone would be with their
smartphones
filming it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right, for sure. Well, that's the thing about Flight 77 is that the only people that were expecting that had warning of a plane was that the Pentagon officials, which always exerted that the Pentagon was always a target for terrorism attacks. But at the time when Flight 11 and 175 crashed into the World Trade Center, the warnings actually went out to the Pentagon just minutes prior to Flight 77 crashing into the structure. And there are people inside the building that actually didn't see the plane crash into the building, but that were burned horribly. In fact, one person was called Lieutenant Colonel Brian Birdwell, who was a lieutenant colonel for the Navy. Yeah. He actually was just 50 feet away from the impact of the nose into the building, and he was actually watching in a room with other colleagues of his of the World Trade Center's burning. He actually had to go to the bathroom, and because he did this, he actually went to the bathroom. As soon as he came out, the plane crashed into the building and killed everybody that was inside that room. Birdwell actually managed to survive because he actually fell, and because he fell, and because where he was where the wing damage was, and that's where the fuel is. He actually had 65-degree burnt all over his body. He managed to crawl out, and they actually picked him up. And when they picked him up, they when they picked him up, his skin started coming off his hands, his arms, and his legs.
Oh,
But he managed to survive, and he said
Yeah.
that, and he relayed his story, and still to this day. So that's another reason why you could dispel missile and know it was a plane. That there were people who actually were burned alive, and that they actually were dragged out by the first responders that were there.
Would Adam, would you concede that there must be some footage somewhere of that plane, whether it be from the public or a business or something like that, and for some reason they're being told that you can't go public with it?
Well, it's funny that you mention that. Is that years ago there was a Freedom of Information request from the victims' families regarding video footage of Washington and New York. And there's an FBI agent named Jacqueline McGuire, and she wrote the McGuire Declaration Act, and she got 83 videotapes that were collected by the FBI released to the public. Most of them were in Washington, and they were coming from businesses, personal cameras that were outside, but none of them filmed a plane crashing into destruction because the cameras weren't pointing up. They were pointing there's one camera at a hotel called Doubletree, and they were, that's a camera view of the parking lot of their hotel. And there's one called Citgo gas station, and the Citgo cameras were facing toward where the parking lot inside the store is by the door. And they're not going to catch a plane, but I would submit to you that there very well could be cameras that captured the plane into the building, but they didn't release. And this is, now, of course, I'm just going to say this is speculation on my part. I don't think that they would release those cameras because the conspiracy of no plane hitting the Pentagon benefits the State Department and the CIA from you looking into who actually funded those hijackers of that plane. And I could get into that in a later podcast if you want.
Oh, that's one of my favorite subjects. That.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Just quickly give us a couple of minutes explanation. You can't leave it like that, Adam.
No, that's fine. I could. There's two hijackers named Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, and they were Saudi al-Qaeda operatives. And since 1999, the CIA became aware of these people, and they started monitoring them in Yemen, in Saudi Arabia, and in the year 2000, they were followed by Malaysian authorities and the CIA at this high-level al-Qaeda summit meeting called the 2000 al-Qaeda Malaysia Summit Meeting, and that's where they were filmed with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi bin al-Shib, another hijacker by the name of Hambali, whose real name is Ridwan Isamuddin. So there's high-level al-Qaeda meeting there. And they didn't share this information with anybody, really, but they shared a little bit with the NSA and the FBI. In the year 2000, from the Malaysia Summit meeting, they went into the United States. The CIA knew this, and they didn't share with the FBI that they were inside the United States. They landed in January of 2000 at Los Angeles, and they stood there for the next 3 weeks. And from there, they met with two Saudi operatives. And these were two Saudi high-level operatives within the intelligence arm of the General Intelligence Directorate. And these two guys were Omar al-Bayoumi and Osama Basnan. And they funded these two guys, Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi. They rented an apartment for them. They got them a car. And the CIA knew this. And the FBI, if they told that information to the FBI could have put right away an investigation into those two people because they were involved with the 2001, the 2000 attack on the USS Cole, and they were also involved with the 1998 U.S. East Embassy bombing. So right away, these two people were not monitored by the FBI or by any State Department officials. And so for the next year and a half, they were inside the United States, unaware by the FBI or the State Department, and they participated in the Flight 77 attack on the Pentagon. And that's the direct connection, the financial connection of Saudi Arabia, the CIA, and the 9/11 attacks. If you don't have the hijackers of those planes, if you don't believe in planes, you don't believe in hijackers, that means that the CIA and the Saudi General Intelligence Directorate are not affiliated with the 9/11 attacks, because who can you blame, right? So that's why that conspiracy of no planes actually
It's
absolved.
convenient.
Right, very convenient, and because the FBI, because of that, there's no camera footage. That conspiracy scenario of there's a missile or or bombs are planted inside the building, automatically dispels the notion of a plane actually impacted the building. And by doing that, you actually absolve the CIA and the Saudis from the connection into 9/11 attacks.
So, Adam, do you think like these attacks could have been prevented? Like
Yes.
with the intelligence that the American authorities had on these hijackers, do you think it could have been prevented? And if so, why didn't they? Why, in your opinion, why did they not prevent it?
I think they could have prevented some of it, and that's coming from numerous intelligence officials that came out later. I interviewed a former FBI agent by the name of Mark Rossini on my podcast, The Darkened Hour. Me and Richard Cox, we interviewed him. Mark Rossini was a part of an intelligence apparatus called Alex Station. Now, Alex Station was a virtual reality station headed by the CIA, and that had three officials from the FBI that were there: Mark Rossini, Doug Miller, and Margaret Gillespie. I'm sorry. I forgot the name of the other official. You'll have to excuse me there.
That's all right.
I think his name was Ed something, or Ed Getz, I believe. I'm butchering his name. But anyway, we interviewed Mark Rossini, and he says that the CIA actually knew about the hijackers, had information about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hamzi, but kept it hidden from the FBI so the FBI wouldn't detain them or arrest them inside the United States. Now, you could say that the CIA protected the hijackers and wanted the attacks to happen because what came from the attacks itself was far more nefarious than the attacks of 9/11 itself, because we saw the war with Iraq, Afghanistan, the implementation of the Patriot Act, the TSA as a security apparatus for all the airplanes in the country. That's speculation itself, but it's warranted because the CIA, if they shared all the information with the FBI, we could have prevented at least, the very least, the attack on the Pentagon and probably part of the attack at the World Trade Center. I can't say that could be them for sure, but coming from Mark Rossini and coming from the terrorist czar, Richard Clarke, they all believe that, yes, part of the attacks could have happened. And that's also a conspiracy unto itself, because a lot of people don't realize that there were more planes that were supposed to be hijacked on 9/11. Not many people know about that.
No. See, the more I look into it, the more questions arise.
Right.
Yeah.
Like with 9/11, there's never going to be like an end to it. There's always a question after you get the answer, but then you get the question, you get the answer, you get the question. But with the hijackers, Adam, it brings me to obviously the World Trade Centers and the apparent conspiracy into the controlled demolition of the World Trade Center. Now, I've seen like photos and things like that of like beams like cut at an angle, just like demolition companies cut beams, like with thermite bands and dynamite. Now, I shared did I share the photo with you earlier, Matt, with the Yeah. So it shows an example of on the site of the World Trade Center of one of the beams. It was cut at an angle, and it was very, very exactly the same as what a demolition team would do. Now, it was explained that these beams were cut by a thermite band. What's your theory on that?
This is something that I stood away from. When I don't have an opinion about how the towers came down, because my opinion would be unfounded. I'm not a physics expert. I'm not even a layman, so I don't know how the towers came down.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me though if it did come down from pre-planted explosives or.
See, the reason why I say that, Adam, is because you like when you talk about like the CIA and the Saudi operatives and things like that, is like the conspiracy into how the towers went down. If they was all in on it and things, and it could have been prevented, and why didn't they prevent it?
Right.
Now, one theory that a guy come out with how the towers come down is momentum and speed. So basically, like, so on the North Tower, 15 floors were damaged.
Right.
Like, so you got the bit that wasn't damaged, and where the plane went into, the 15 floors above was damaged. And his theory is how the towers come down is basically the weight of the damaged section hit each floor, and each floor buckled and broke because obviously the beams are that hot that they buckled, and it gradually brought the towers down like a demolition. So this is where it comes from. Oh, it was a demo job. Do you get what I mean?
Right. I think you're repeating the works of David Chandler.
I think so. Yeah, he's like he's a scientific chemist. Like he's a scientist.
Well, David Chandler was the preeminent voice of the 9/11 Truth Movement back in 2006 and 8. Between those years, he actually did a presentation regarding how the North and South Towers actually came down from pre-planted explosives in the building. And I managed to interview him for my podcast, and we let him describe what he feels could have his explanation of how the towers actually came down. I myself can't give you a workable opinion because it would be opinion based on ignorance. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about physics.
Same,
yeah. And as I was saying, an opinion based on ignorance, that's me and you, isn't it, Lee?
Yeah.
It's all our opinions. We don't know anything about this stuff. We're learning as we go.
Right.
I'm gonna have to. We've been doing 40 minutes and we've done 2 points.
Yeah.
So I better move on a little.
9/11 is a very complex and very broad discussion. It's not as easy as people make it out to be.
No,
I wish it did.
Go on, Lee. What was you going to say?
No, I was saying we could do so many episodes on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So what was it? So I've got down here for point. I've just jotted some stuff down here. So we was talking about the wing. We were saying in the videos the way the wing sliced into the building, and would that be possible? And you've come back with that it went through, which obviously we didn't consider. It's just the cladding on the outside and the wings kind of like. So I don't know whether to just skip that one through. Do you want to say anything about that, Adam?
No, the simplicity of it is that a lot of people think that all the wings actually went through steel. Actually, the way the World Trade Center was structured is that they had steel beams, and in front of the steel beams was this aluminum cladding, and that's where you see the damage of the wings by the aluminum cladding. So they weren't steel. So then
the next point you've come up with was that did we say that people had said they didn't see any planes? Was one of the points we must forget the podcast now, Lee?
Yeah,
did you say that?
Yeah, I think you it was one of the things we said in the podcast that people didn't actually hear or see the planes or something.
I've seen some of Adam's videos on his YouTube of some of the witnesses and stuff, and so I think this is just another point to kind of just be dismissed, because people are always gonna say, well, I saw this person, they said they was there and they didn't see any planes, and then there'll be 5 that did and 5 that didn't, and it's just so we go straight onto this suggestion of CGI. Okay, so Adam, you said earlier on, I don't know whether it was on the podcast or beforehand, that you actually watched a plane hit the building from Queens, right?
That's right.
So you saw a plane.
We saw the explosion from the plane.
So did you see a plane coming in?
We couldn't from that vantage point. No, we couldn't. We saw the explosion though.
Right.
We're too far because Flight 175 is actually coming from the Jersey side, so we can't see the plane because the buildings were in the view of where the plane was coming from.
Okay, so What
But
do you say? What do you say to these when you see videos when they've got like the undercarriage thing of the plane, and they say this is different to what this would have looked like, and this looks a bit sketchy, and all this kind of stuff? What would you say to that?
Well, yeah, I've heard about the pod underneath the plane, and the plane was actually darker. Well, yeah, United Airlines planes are gray and dark blue. The problem with that is that there are videos of people from the Jersey pier that actually have clear view of the plane crashing right into the structure. And at that point, when Flight 11 actually crashed, not many people saw Flight 11 crash into the first building, because who else is going to look up and see a plane? But by that time, everybody in downtown Manhattan, including Jersey, are all looking up and seeing the smoke coming out and filming it. And then you have over 20, I think it's 27 videos that see a plane crashing into the South Tower.
How many videos of the first plane? There was wasn't that one with the fireman doing the video thing?
Yeah, that's the Jules Naudet video, but that's not the action. A lot of people actually think that's the only video. There's another video, and I have it. And it's on YouTube, I believe, of a guy who's on the Brooklyn. I want to say the Brooklyn Bridge. He's right by the tunnel, and he's actually filming Lower Manhattan because he's a tourist, and he manages to capture the plane entering into the North Tower, and it's really quick. It's like 2 seconds.
Right.
It's not like a clear video of the Naudet video, but he actually manages to capture the plane into the tower. So there's 2 videos that are public knowledge of Flight 11 crashing in North Tower.
Lee?
No, I totally agree. Like I said I said in the last 9/11 podcast, but I believe thoroughly that planes went into the Twin Towers, whether like Adam said earlier on, hijacked or remote controlled or done by any other way. I believe that planes went into the Twin Towers because. Like I know we've come far in technology, but to CGI something like that is pretty astronomical, and it's pretty amazing if they could do that.
It is kind of ridiculous when you actually discuss it. It is kind of ridiculous, because there would have to be so many people involved in that lie, for it to have any credibility.
Exactly, and
but you can get carried away when you YouTube things, and and one video leads to another, and you can see more and more. Actually, you start convincing yourself an hour and a half later, when you've watched 3,000 videos, that this is a computer in the sky, and it was actually a missile with a plane built around it afterwards, and all this kind of stuff.
It's because people are looking for something that's not there. Do you know what I mean? That's what conspiracy is. It's like that they're looking for more than what is actually happening.
And this is coming from Conspiracy Lee.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
you seeing the light today. So the next point we were speaking about. We mentioned loose change. Now that's been fairly thoroughly discredited through the years. A lot of what they've said on there, and I've seen the guys that made that in actual debates with, I believe it was Mark Roberts and other guys like that, and they didn't look particularly convincing when their theories are being questioned. So anything to say about loose change there, Adam?
Yeah, Loose Change, unfortunately, is the most popular documentary in 9/11 circles, and it's going to be the most popular documentary of all time relating to the 9/11 attacks. But it's also one of the most erroneous. Now they managed to do, I think, 3 revisions of it, or 4. Yeah. But the gist of their message is that, no plane hit the Pentagon, and the planes actually landed at Westover Military Airport, which is a reserve base in Massachusetts. Where they came up with that claim is based on speculation on their part, but they don't tell you that. And that's the difference between somebody who's a responsible journalist and an irresponsible journalist. I mean, it's fine to speculate as to what could have happened, but make sure that you relate that message to the audience, or else they're going to take you on face value and believe you. And what they do is that those people then tell others, and then that repeats the process and repeats the conspiracy. And that's a problem, because there are people like myself who try to educate other people but I think it's rather time consuming, and it's almost an act against time. And the odds are that, there's millions of people who believe in the most fanatical conspiracy theories. Not to say that there are actual conspiracy theories surrounding 9/11, there's plenty, but that these fantastical conspiracies have completely blanketed the rational conspiracy surrounding 9/11. And that's the problem. That's the problem with Loose Change, is that they most likely distant themselves. I know Jason Burmis has.
Yeah.
I don't think he's more, I think he changed his mind regarding Flight 77, but I don't know about that with Corey Rowe and Dylan Avery. So I don't bother with them. And I used to really critique them, but I don't do it anymore, because there are far more bigger names who have really abused the responsible nature of 9/11. So I really don't have much to say in the way of Loose Change anymore.
I looked at when the first time I see it, I just dismissed it in my own head, because to me it was insane what they were suggesting. And then I kind of started to think, maybe there's something in some of this. It is a bit suspicious with the Pentagon and all that other stuff. But then I read there was a Loose Change, basically a guide to Loose Change online, debunking it. And I read through all the points in that, and I just thought, I don't know. And then I think in one of their later editions, they took out about what you said about the passengers being dropped off elsewhere and all that other stuff. So I don't know. I don't even know what to think about that. What was we talking about? So the phone calls, right? We're getting to the phone calls now from the planes. So I wasn't aware. I've seen what people are saying. You can't make the phone calls from X amount of wherever high they were at the time and all this other stuff. And you've said that they was using the phones that were on board, which I wasn't even aware of, to be honest. I've never seen anything like that. But the weirdest thing, like you said that Mark Bingham would introduce himself even to his mother as, "Hello, it's Mark Bingham." That's just the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Very strange, yeah.
Do you not think that's strange, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. But his mother actually gave an interview to History Channel. They did a documentary about 9/11 itself. And she's actually on there saying that that's how he used to present himself on the phone when he was nervous.
To her?
Yeah, to her.
That's
and to anyone else. I think he, I want to say he worked for a company out in San Jose, I believe. I don't remember the name of the company that he used to work for, but he was a business associate for this company. And when he used to call his mother, he used to say, "Hello, mother, this is Mark Bingham," because he would actually say that to his business associates on the phone. "Hello, this is Mark Bingham of so-and-so company." So, but he had a problem with anxiety. So then whenever he got nervous, he would try to calm himself down by saying that, "Hello, I'm Mark Bingham," and blah, blah, blah. And he used to address his mother this way.
Yeah, I think I'd have a problem with anxiety if I was getting hijacked at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ron, there's a lot of phone calls based upon Flight 93 where the phone calls were confused, they were confused. They didn't know what was happening because most of those people, like Mark Bingham, they were sitting in business class. They weren't in first class. So they couldn't see what was going on. The only information they were getting were from the flight attendants who were saying, "I think there's a hijacking going on." And you yourself, when you're on a plane, you have the comfort of saying that before 9/11, there weren't many hijackings going on in the United States since the very mid 70s and early 80s. So by that time, you won't believe what was happening around you. And shock comes from in many forms. There's people who are laughing. There's people who are crying, hysterical, or there's people who are just relatively calm. And a lot of these phone calls for 93, it showed that these people were relatively calm and confused. They didn't know what was happening. But the reason why these phone calls are so important, the phone calls, especially for Flight 93, contradict the official narrative purported by the FBI and the 9/11 Commission. And this is a reason why that conspiracy of no planes actually absolves the FBI, the CIA, Israel Mossad, and the Saudi General Intelligence Director from the 9/11 attacks, is because the phone calls that were made from these planes. For example, in Flight 93, there were 6 phone calls that were made to loved ones, people who actually received them. Every single one of those calls said that there were 3 hijackers on that plane. What did the FBI and the 9/11 Commission say? How many hijackers were on board that plane? Do you know?
No.
4. So
it's crazy, isn't it? It's like
right. So they're saying that there's 3 hijackers. Now the real conspiracy is that there were 2 hijackers in the cockpit and 1 outside the door, and that guy had a bomb belt. Now this is the only hijacker who's supposed to be having a bomb belt. So if there's 2 now we know for a fact there were 2 people in the cockpit and 1 outside the door, but yet the FBI and the 9/11 Commission said there were 4 hijackers. That's why they leave that conspiracy out there, because it contradicts the real conspiracy that there were 3 hijackers in that plane.
Yeah. Weren't the 9/11 investigation done behind closed doors? And they had all sorts of like top officials giving evidence, like George Bush. Apparently, they indict George Bush, but he managed to get out of it.
Well, what happened was that there were certain interviews by the 9/11 Commission
Yeah.
that were remained from the public, and these interviews were by 3 people. 1, George Bush and Dick Cheney together.
Yeah.
2, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, who was interviewed by the 9/11 Commission in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And 3 was Thomas Drake of the NSA. None of these interviews are made public. And
Yeah.
the reason is because it's simple. The NSA was monitoring this place called Ahmed al-Hada, the Al-Qaeda Yemen hub, where all the phone calls around the world by Al-Qaeda were directing their calls to. The NSA had a bug inside that house. And so the audio, and they bugged that house for 5 years, since 1996 to 2001. Okay, those recordings are classified. That's why the interview with Thomas Drake is classified. You can't listen to that. It's not in the 9/11 Commission report, and it's not available for public view.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer was a part of Able Danger. Able Danger was a defense intelligence apparatus and defense intelligence agency apparatus that was monitoring terrorist cells that were abroad inside the United States. Able Danger managed to find 3 terrorist cells inside the 2 inside the United States. Their information was classified. In fact, their information was destroyed on orders from U.S. Army lawyers, saying that you're not allowed to monitor U.S. citizens, because Muhammad Atta, Zia Jarrah, and Marwan al-Shayh were considered U.S. citizens by the Army. But what contradicted that was that they weren't legally citizens. They were here on temp visas. So that means they weren't really visas. That means the information that was collected by Able Danger should have been kept, and we could have looked at it, the public itself, but they were ordered destroyed. George Bush and Dick Cheney, don't get me started. They knew what was happening before 9/11 happened. I think they had intelligence that contradicted the official narrative themselves. That's the reason why you're not allowed to hear it publicly.
Yeah, because the reason why I say about George Bush as well is because when 9/11 happened,
right,
there was video footage of him at a school,
right,
and it looks as though to me like a Secret Service agent whispered something in his ear, basically telling him about 9/11, and he completely just gave a straight face, like he knew it was happening.
Right. Or he was, or he's like a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
That's the reason why he's in Florida and not in the not in Washington.
Yeah.
And when he tried to come back, he actually had to sign a waiver by the Secret Service, because the Secret Service actually didn't want him back to Washington, because they felt that Washington was a hot spot because a plane actually crashed into the Pentagon. But George Bush was adamant about returning. So he actually was managing to fly around the United States for a long period of time. And the conspiracy is that Dick Cheney was in charge and not George Bush. And, there was a phone on board the plane that he was using, Air Force One, and
Yeah.
sometimes when he was trying to talk to Cheney, the call was cut out.
Okay.
And so he was actually the conspiracy, which could be valid, was that they didn't want him back because he wasn't a part of the operation itself, or he was unaware. He may have known that there was an attack coming because, yes, there was numerous intelligence reports saying that, hey, there's an Al Qaeda attack that's going to happen inside the United States, but it wasn't very direct. It's very vague, so they didn't know what buildings were attacked and who. So,
So, are you saying that you believe that they were aware of what was going to happen and didn't do anything to stop it?
well, for sure. I mean, this is recorded. This is for public record.
Yeah. They was warned that could potentially happen. But are you saying that they was aware on that day that was going to happen, or some of them were aware?
I'll be very careful to say that I believe, through speculation, certain people knew what was going to happen that day. Maybe, but that's totally my opinion.
Okay. Why would you believe that they wanted it to happen?
Because of what followed afterwards. What followed after 9/11 was more important than
Lee loves what followed afterwards, didn't you, Lee?
Yeah.
We'll definitely do another show on that because we're over an hour already. Right. So the next point was the passports. Right. Adam Fitzgerald, you are not seriously trying to tell me that you believe that there's a possibility, after everything that's been described, when we said about planes disintegrating on mud and shit like this, that there's a possible way that a full tank of petrol or gas or whatever you call it over there smash into a building, plane explodes, building collapses on plane, passport survives. Please tell me no.
Isn't that surreal?
Now,
Now, this is something that I might concede. Now, there's also many conspiracies regarding, they found a passport for Saddam al-Assami, Khalid al-Mihdhar at the Pentagon, but it was badly damaged. Saddam al-Assami's passport basically looked brand new, but it did suffer a little bit of damage. But it was founded by some passerby. That passerby gave it to a cop, and that cop gave it to the FBI. Now, I'll concede to you that's highly suspicious. Now, if you believe that passport is planted, there's a problem with that. There's one small problem. Saddam al-Assami is from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. On the passport, it suggests that he's from Saudi Arabia. If you believe that the passport is planted, it was made to show, hey, these hijackers were from, Iraq or Afghanistan, because we went to war with Iraq and Afghanistan. Why didn't the passport say he's from Iraq or Afghanistan? That's the only problem. Although I don't discount that passport could have been planted. However, it would remain strange to me if that was planted by an intelligence official, say. Why wouldn't they make that direction, connect him to say, hey, look, this hijacker came from Iraq? Because for months, for weeks and months that happened from 9/11, the State Department was trying to implore Richard Clark to make that connection and say that, hey, we need to show that these people were from Iraq because because that's where we're going to war. We want to go to war with Iraq. So
everything you're saying makes perfect sense, and why it wouldn't make sense to plant that passport. But it must have been planted. Absolutely. It surely would be an impossibility for that passport, a paper passport, to survive that.
Well, I would agree with you. I find it, like I said, I find it very surreal that it managed. But however, on Flight 93, they did manage to find ID cards to a couple of the passengers on board Flight 93. One of them was C.C. Lyle.
Again, why would an ID card survive and bones don't?
Paper. I mean, well, they found bone. They found backbone.
Fragments.
Fragments. But we're talking about a solid inanimate object as opposed to a paper object that could survive out of an explosion through the kinetic energy of the plane. I will concede though that Saddam Husseini's passport could have been planted. Could have been.
Yeah. See, to me, all these attacks, it's like we're going to go on to another show with what happened after, but all these attacks, going by the intelligence and the information that's out there, is like everything points to Saudi Arabia and Israel, and nothing points to Afghanistan and Iraq.
That's right.
It's so strange. It's like somebody coming up to you, punching you in the face, then you going up to a complete stranger who has nothing to do with it and punching them in the face. Does that make sense? It's like it's just absolutely crazy that like these like Saudi Arabia and Israel are involved in it, which I'm not doubting. I think. Again, it's another show. We'll go into that another show.
There's such a big topic. We could do like 85 hours of this, but I ain't got 85. Well, maybe I have. I'm on lockdown. Who knows? But,
we're all on lockdown.
So I think the next one was. I think we're gonna have to. I think with the passports, we're gonna have to just all agree that was weird. But the black boxes. Is there anything you want to say about them, Lee? Or have we already covered that? Do you think?
I think we covered that. It's like I've done a lot of research on black boxes, and like they're not indestructible. There are cases where black boxes. There's like Adam said, 31 cases black boxes weren't found. But it's just I find it hard to believe that out of the 9/11 event, I think only one black box was recovered. Is that right, Adam?
Yeah, the cockpit voice recorder for Flight 93.
Yeah. And the others wasn't, which is like, to me, is very suspicious because...
Doesn't that sorry, Lee. Doesn't that feel a bit weird, though, as well? Because earlier on, Adam, you said that plane had gone nose first, straight down into the ground, and that was the explanation for why everything was so tiny. Yet, the black box survived in the cockpit.
Both of them, yes.
Well, the black box is actually situated in the tail of the plane.
What is
the black box? Because they when a plane crash happens, obviously they always like going by science that a plane would always crash nose first. So in order to preserve the information and everything of that plane, like the voice recordings and everything, is the black box is based in the tail of the plane.
Is it?
Yeah.
So how would that be buried then?
See, this is the thing that I'm struggling with, because it's like that's what they always say. The safest part of the plane is near the back, because that's where they put the black box. No, I'm not saying the black box makes everything safe. It just preserves everything. Like it records all the instruments on that plane, what's happening with that plane, like if it has mechanical failure, if it has anything at all. The cockpit voice recordings, it saves that as well. Basically the black box is made of two components. It's made of a part which records, as I said, all the mechanical parts of the plane, the computerized parts and everything, so it detects any faults. And then the voice recorder that records any conversation in the cockpit.
And they're both stored. Adam, you want to come in on this?
Yeah, no. There's a lot of conspiracy surrounding this. In fact, at the World Trade Center, it's generally known that the black boxes, neither the flight data recorders or the cockpit voice recorder, survived. There's only one instance of a contradiction with this. Now, in the days after 9/11, I think it was about a week later, two first responders by the name of Mike Ballone and Nicholas DeMasi claimed in 2004 that they found 3 of the 4 boxes, and that federal agents actually took them, and they mentioned to Ballone and DeMasi not to mention this. And the FBI, of course, denies the whole story, but it goes to show you that who knows who were at the controls of the planes. Now, if you believe that the planes were remote controlled and that the hijackers themselves realized that they weren't flying the plane. They could have said that. And that's the reason why they wanted those black boxes destroyed. That in itself would be highly problematic, and it would show a direct connection of inside job, if you want to say. I hate using that term. Yeah, that would be highly suspicious. So I can't tell you for sure that the black boxes were totally destroyed at the World Trade Center, but we don't know what happened there, and we probably won't know unless, you know, we have documentation and files that come out years and years later from the National Archives that contradict that claim. Yeah,
because I don't believe, like, when they said they declassified all the audio to 9/11, there's obviously a lot missing, because obviously when they're saying that the black boxes wasn't retrieved, which I find it quite hard, because like black boxes, they've got a battery life of 30 days, and like they've got like underwater sonar as well, like GPS, and it can go to a certain depth. But in regards to the black boxes, it's like when the 9/11 attacks happened, like debris went for miles. Like there's just been a new news report that they found a landing gear in between two buildings in New York just recently, like 5 blocks away from the crash site of like Twin Towers. So you could well believe that it could be anywhere, but surely that them black boxes have got some kind of like GPS on where they can find them, because if they can, like with flight MH, the Malaysian flight, the recent flight that crashed into the sea. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Like they was tracking like the sonar for ages, but they just couldn't find it, because obviously the battery was dying. It took them absolute ages to find any sort of like wreckage. But I'm just baffled with that. Like you say, whether they were found and they were taken by the FBI is a different story. I suppose we'll never know.
Right, your suspicions are warranted. Like, if they just made it up, if the Massey and Ballone just made it up, yeah, I could believe that too. But that seems to be a little bit more peculiar, because why would they lie about a black box, for example?
Yeah.
When they could
You
lie
just
about
wouldn't, would you?
anything
It's not something that comes into your head and you think, oh yeah, with this lie about black boxes, this say we found them. You just wouldn't do that, would you? In fact, you would be pushing to say you did find them, because it would kind of give you some sort of name. If you're like an agent or a cop, you're trying to get up in the ladder, and that's something that would help you. So
yeah, when it comes to the black boxes at the World Trade Center, I leave it up in the air, because it's not definitively known.
Yeah. It's very strange.
It is weird. I've never even thought of that. You know, if those planes were being remote controlled, and the basically the hijackers were the Nazis, and they wasn't, and they were speaking saying, I'm not even in control of this plane. Yeah, that would be a reason to lose them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because in one of the I think it was Flight 93. One of the hijackers, who's apparently flying a plane, was saying to the air traffic control, "Just be quiet, and everyone's going to be safe."
Yeah, and
it's like, it's just very strange things. There's a lot of question marks in the whole event for me. And as we say, like Adam, I think we could have you on many more times, because this can go on and on and on.
Sure.
One last thing on this point, though. So we've got everything else I think we've covered in some way. Yeah. But one thing we didn't touch on, I don't think you mentioned, Building 7. What do you think? Why did that fall down?
Again, this is an area based on ignorance when it comes to physics. But I lived in Vegas for 10 years, and I know what demolition looks like. And I don't blame people who say that looks like demolition, because in my view, it looked like a demolition job.
Yeah.
But I can't say for certain because, like I told you before about the World Trade Center, it would be, my opinion would be based on ignorance. But from my visual view, yeah, that's what a demolition looks like. So, but I can't say for sure.
I've heard a story on Building 7 that that it got it got damaged that much that it was totally viable, like financially, to bring it down. But if that's still the case, if they did do a controlled demolition and bring it down, I'm no expert in controlled demolitions, but I don't think they could go into a building in like a couple of hours or an hour or something like this, or a few minutes, and just plant loads of dynamite and bring a building down like that. From what I understand, a controlled demolition takes days to prepare.
There's a famous interview by a Dutch demolition expert, Danny Joanko.
Yeah.
And he asserts that it looked like a classic controlled demolition. But when the guy told him it was done on September 11th, he showed him that video. He goes, "It's not impossible, but it would have been very hard."
Yeah.
And that he showed the interviewer where the columns would have been exposed, and he showed him the heart of the columns. And he says that they probably would have worked when the building was on fire, and that they put like shape charges there probably, and that's how they could have compromised the cores. But he doesn't discount it.
No. I think it's very hard to discount Building 7 is not a controlled demolition. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Sure.
It's tough for anyone to say, oh no, that got severely damaged in the 9/11 attacks, which it probably didn't. In my opinion, I think that was a controlled demolition. I think it was.
Adam, what do you think about I don't know is there any merit to the theory that a few people have said? It's not a popular theory, or maybe not, I don't know, that the Shanksville plane was potentially heading for Building 7.
It would have been, no, they would have been intercepted because at that time, that's 5:43 p.m. When they came down. Now, I will submit to you, when 175 crashed into the South Tower, there were intercept jets in New York 11 minutes later. So it would have been hard for that plane to hit World Trade Center 7. Now, there's conspiracies about where that plane was heading for. According to a phone call made by a flight attendant named Sandra Bradshaw of Flight 93, she says that one of the hijackers said that the plane is going to crash in the U.S. Capitol. Now, whether that was going to happen or not, I don't know. But that's pretty profound because none of the other hijackers actually made their declarations about where they were going. In fact, on Flight 11 and on Flight 11, you can hear Mohammed Atta, if it's him, say that the plane is actually going back to the airport.
Yeah.
There's no declaration like that with 77 or 175. But that's pretty strange. If Flight 93 was actually going to pronounce where they were going. But there was phone calls made to the passengers on that plane from loved ones saying, hey, there was planes crashing into the World Trade Center. And that's why they revolted. And the audio from the cockpit voice recorder was played to the victims' families in the Zacharias Moussaoui trial 2006. That audio is not public, but the transcript is. And that's important because if you go look at the transcript, go Google Flight 93 transcript, you'll notice on the bottom at the very end, there's a person sitting next to the pilot, and the person is telling him, Saeed, up, down the plane, Saeed, up, down, meaning that the passengers who were using the food cart to crash to try to get into the pilot's cockpit, so the plane was going up and down and side to side to throw them off. However, Saeed, yes, there was a Saeed on that plane. His name was Saeed Al-Ghamdi. He's a muscle hijacker. What is he doing piloting the plane?
Yeah.
Who is supposed to be the pilot of that plane? Ziad Jarrah. Now, I could get into a whole background for you about who Ziad Jarrah was and his links to maybe Israeli intelligence, because his uncle's name is Ali al-Jarrah, and Ali al-Jarrah was a teacher in Lebanon, and Ali al-Jarrah was arrested by Lebanese authorities for being a spy for Israel for 25 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I've heard a lot about Israel involved in a lot of things. So it's like, yeah. Go on, Adam. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but like I said, without hijackers and without Ziad Jarrah piloting the plane, you can't make that connection, right? Because there's no connection at all. But if you take a look at just some of the profiles of these pilot hijackers, like Muhammad Atta, like Ziad Jarrah, you'll find that there's a lot of intelligence apparatus with their fingerprints regarding just these two guys. The muscle hijackers are nothing; they're nobodies. So you don't have to worry. They're just there for one reason and one reason alone, to make sure that nobody interferes with the pilots and them crashing into the planes themselves. I can get into that in another podcast for you regarding the Saudi and Israeli apparatuses of 9/11.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be good.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much covered everything. Just one other thing I wanted to get your opinion on.
Sure.
When you see these people like Alex Jones and people like that coming out with all this, just first, whatever Alex Jones is or isn't, he's kind of the one that brings this to the fore quite a lot, this kind of thing, and kind of makes people aware of these conspiracies all the time. I'm not asking you to like trash him or anything like that, but is there anything he says that you sit and think that's right, or is everything comes out of his mouth you think, well, a load of shit?
If it's regarding 9/11, he's spouting nonsense.
Right.
Most of the time, I don't really care for Alex Jones. I hate to say it, but I loathe him more than any other individual. One thing I'm not into is a bit like publicly bashing people on the conspiracy side. I used to do it on Facebook when I had a Facebook account, but I deleted it because I knew what I was becoming. And so now I just manage to be on myself and try to post whatever I can on viral media. But Alex Jones has done more damage to 9/11 than any other individual on the face of the planet. And he's been doing it for other instances like Sandy Hook or moon landings and other major events. And he's the primary reason behind most of these conspiracies regarding 9/11. And because he has such a huge, huge audience, he caters to tens of millions of people. If this guy ever told the truth about 9/11, believe me when I tell you that the State Department, the Pentagon, CIA, Israel, Saudi Arabia would compromise this guy from day one. And he's been doing it since the mid-1990s.
I think the guy's crazy. I think he's off his nut.
Well, you know what? If I may interject too, the reason why he's allowed to do this, the reason why he's allowed to become so outlandish, so conspiracy mindseted, is so that he can upend actual careful student researchers of certain events like a 9/11, and to make them, in the eyes of the society or public, to be just as nuts as he is.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's his job. That's what his job is doing. Because there are careful researchers of 9/11. They're not very pronounced as Alex Jones is, but they're out there. You just have to find them.
This is I think you've enlightened both of us, Matt, hasn't he?
Oh no, I knew all of this before. That's what he said. No, of course.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you on, Adam. And hopefully we can do this again many times, because there's lots. Just looking at some of the stuff you sent me, there's lots of talking points that I wasn't even aware were talking points. So I just don't think it would be fair on you to kind of like interview you on stuff like that when we are so completely ignorant to it. It would be kind of like we'd need to kind of brush ourselves up on it a little bit before to make any kind of sense with a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like why I've stayed away from it a little bit. But for everything here, I mean, hopefully anybody listening that's kind of been listening to Alex Jones, this is why I brought him up, not particularly to say what a dick he is, but just to kind of like get people that are just getting these snippets of information. And now that we've kind of gone through every point that I can, do you think there's anything I've missed, Lee? Like
No, I don't think there is. I think
that you hear a lot. That you hear a lot when people talk about 9/11 conspiracies and just start basically having online arguments about this thing and this would never happen. As far as I know, I've got all of them.
Yeah. Like I'll just say I've no doubt in my mind that 9/11 happened and planes went into the World Trade Center. I've no doubt in that, and it all leads on to kind of the reason why. If we can do a show on that, that'd be
Absolutely.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and thank you for having me on and entertaining me for these points. And I'd be more than willing to talk further about the why and why it happened and why it was allowed to happen.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll stop there then. Thanks for coming on, Adam, and thanks, Conspiracy Lee, as ever.
No worries. Thank you, Adam.
I'll speak to you both soon.
Thanks, guys.